belong, each and every one. All of us belong in this sacred circle. All of us belong, each and every one. All of us belong in this sacred circle. We are sisters, brothers, children in one family of God. We are sisters, brothers, children in one family of God. All of us belong, each and every one. All of us belong in this sacred circle. All of us belong, each and every one. All of us belong in this sacred circle.
Welcome to Homecoming, where we gather together, each of us with God, and all of us together in spiritual family. And a special welcome to my wonderful sister, Elizabeth. It's so wonderful to see you. Elizabeth Callahan, Executive Director of UUI and a wonderful servant of the Revelation. And it's wonderful to see and to think about all the folks out there who are watching Homecoming, this initial gathering of Homecoming, and who may watch it out ahead in the future. We had a little glitch, a little problem with recording the live session, so we are redoing it in a recorded session, so you get the essence of what we covered. Unfortunately, we won't have the live audience portion afterwards, which we will have in subsequent recordings that are up there. So this is week one of the regathering of Homecoming, a spiritual family gathering. We have a lot to share with you all today. But before we start, we're going to take, as we always do, a minute to quiet down and worship, to expand the boundaries of what we're paying attention to, who we are aware of around us and within us, deep within, where God has taken up residence inside of each one of us. In a sense, what God wants most is our companionship as our loving Father and our nurturing Mother, and what God wants is to love each one of us, and probably would not mind at all, and would really enjoy receiving a little bit of our love back. So let's take a minute of quiet to do that, to rest in God with love. Thank you, divine spiritual parent, our Father, our Mother, every quality of parental love pouring into us and around us. Help us to stay grounded in your presence, loving you as we share with each other. Amen. Okay. So we're going to take a little experiment here in just a moment, but before I do that, I want to share screen. So what I'd like you to do is just let your eyes rest on this and take it in. We're going to be talking a lot today about two terms, symbolism and culture. And this is what you would refer to, what the revelators refer to as a symbolism. And we're going to talk a lot about the different parts of it and how it works in us. But for now, let yourself sort of drift from the top to the bottom and take in the different elements. And I'm going to pull this down here, and we're going to work with it a little bit. So what I'm going to do now, in just a moment, I'm going to invite you to sit back and relax. Just close your eyes. And I'm going to simply say each of these phrases, and I'm going to pause after each one just for a few seconds. And the idea here, we'll see, it's sort of an interior experience and it's a little bit of an experiment. The idea here is to invite you to in a sense, free associate uh, in response to these phrases, right? So whatever your thoughts, whatever your feelings, whatever life experiences are brought up by a phrase like the indwelling spirit or the will of God or etc. Um, just allow those to flow, allow them to well up inwardly in your inner environment. So go ahead, sit back, relax, close your eyes, and we'll do this for a moment. A way of life, a way of life in the family of God, the spiritual parent-child relationship, our spiritual sister-brother relationships, the indwelling spirit, the will of God, love, eternal life, and faith in these great spiritual gifts. Hmm. Okay, thank you. Well, I am curious to hear what that experience was like for you. Like I say, it's a bit of an experiment. And in our event on Sunday, where we had a live audience and folks were participating, we did that in the breakouts. And then we did it afterwards in our large group sharing. And we will have those experiences available if you come in upcoming Sundays, the breakouts and the large group sharing. Um, so interesting. File that away. We'll come back to it at some future time, I'm sure, in conversation. What I'd like to do now is introduce, as I mentioned, a couple of key words and unpack them a little bit for our consideration. The first one is the word symbolism, and the second one is the word culture. And so we're going to look at the nature of these phenomena, symbolism and culture, and we're going to look at the relationship between the two of them, how they interact, because they are very synergistic. Um, so symbolism. Uh, Here's another term, and this is a really interesting term. Not that many people are familiar with it. It's the word semiotics, semiotics. Semiotics is the study, the academic study of symbols. Um, so what is a symbol? a symbol is something, it's actually anything that points to a larger reality. So the symbol basically evokes that reality. It brings it up in our thinking and in our feeling. It stimulates an inner experience of that larger reality. It can be a word or a phrase, sort of like what we did in our little exercise. We mentioned these phrases that are symbolic phrases and allowed ourselves to react to what the symbol stimulated in us. So a symbol can be a word, as I mentioned. It can be an image, a visual image. It can be a thing like a flag or a statue that has symbolic properties. It can be a person, someone like Jesus or Mother Teresa or Martin Luther King, are symbolic human beings that bring up all kinds of associations for us. So semiotics then is the study of symbols, how they work in us, how they affect us, how we use them to conceptualize, to hold our ideas and our ideals and our values to embody those realities. And it's also the study of how we use symbols to communicate with each other for many different purposes. So all that is subsumed in what will be called the study of semiotics. And literally, there are hundreds of classes taught at universities on this subject, and many thousands of books written in the field of semiotics. So I'd like to share screen with you again and say a little more about this. So each of these words is a symbol. They also group, like the family way and a way of life in the family of God and the will of God. Each of these would be understood as a symbolic phrase. So each word is a symbol. Each collection of words has its own powerful impetus and brings up associations in us and among each other when we communicate. Each phrase will do that. So eternal life has a powerful, stimulating image. And all of this together is what the revelators refer to as a symbolism, right? Which is a systematic arrangement, a very intentional arrangement of symbols and symbolic phrases. It's an integrated, systemic reality. It has a number of parts that comprise that whole symbolic system. And this particular system is something, moreover, that we can actually experience, and even experience, I would say, vividly and powerfully. And even more than that, actually, this particular symbolism points to a set of living relationships between persons. And we're going to talk about that more as we go along. So in a sense, the highest reality in all of creation is persons and relationships between persons. And we'll be exploring the implications of that quite a bit as we go forward. So ideally, if it's used for its intended purposes, this symbolism, it progressively helps us to move actually into a whole way of living in these relationships, these spiritual relationships, and helps us move into, really desirably, a very different and higher and spiritual way of life. So if we're beginning to have this overall transformative experience of living in spiritual family relationships that's connected to this symbolism, how do we refer to it? How do we make reference to it? What do we call it? How do we communicate to each other about this experience? So the overall descriptive phrase for this symbolism, this living experience that we all can have, is a way of life in the family of God. And the even more simple symbolic handle, the way that we could refer to it in a sense on the fly, make reference to it, is the family way. Because we want to be able to communicate to each other about it and with other people, especially as we attempt to share spiritual truth in a way that can really nurture people and help transform the way that they live. So, so each of these labels, the family way, way of life in the family of God, is in a sense a tool for holding the whole thing, this entire constellation of meanings and values and powerful experiences in relationship, in living relationship. It's a way of holding them in our minds and in our hearts and in our souls. Um, and a symbolism like this is highly intentional. It's designed to accomplish a particular purpose. And you could understand it actually as a particular cultural purpose. Because increasingly, as we engage with this symbolism, we're beginning to evolve a living culture. So, so what do we mean by culture? Um, Another huge phenomenon around which there have been hundreds and thousands of books written on the nature of culture and culturation. It's a huge field in the area of sociology. Culture is, in a sense, the customary way that we do things, right? It's the way we experience things regularly over time. What we tend to think, how we tend to think and feel habitually, our customary ways of thinking, feeling, our priorities, our actions, our priority decisions and values, all that is a part of culture. Culture is also the characteristic ways that we communicate with each other, and how we relate to each other in relationships, both one-to-one and also in groupings, in gatherings. Groups have their cultures, their customary ways of engaging and interacting. And we could get into quite a bit of detail, sort of examples of that. But I think you probably get the sense of what I'm trying to convey. It's the whole way we live our lives, and also the whole way we are in relationship with God and with each other. Uh, and it's helpful to think of culture as manifesting on three different levels. One is our individual personal culture, the way each of us does things customarily, our inner lives, our outer lives, what we tend to think about, our habits. On the second level is our various group cultures, so personal culture, group culture. So for instance, this gathering has an emerging culture. The entire movement around the revelation is a culture. It's an emerging, evolving culture. Um, and we have usages, ways of doing things, and it's these realities are growing. They're evolving cultural expressions. Uh, so personal culture, group culture, and then in a larger sense, the third level is to think of societal culture and even civilizational culture. Um, and beyond that, in the last 100 years, you could even say we have the beginnings of an emerging global culture or global civilization. So, symbolism and culture. These are really huge and incredibly important realities in our lives. Um, One last word I want to toss into the mix here, and that is the word cult, which has a mixed history. It meant something rather different close to 100 years ago when the revelators were trying to communicate truth to us. And more recently, it's taken on lots of different connotations. But in a sociological sense, the way that term was originally used, it's related to culture, right? Cult, in a sense, is the underlying structure of a culture. In a sense, it's the skeletal structure of a culture, the key touchstones that stimulate and shape that culture of how we do things. It's the way we hold on to it. And often, as we've talked about here, that skeletal structure of cult and culture is captured or embodied in an overall symbolic metaphor or a primary symbolism. So for Jesus, that primary metaphor, the symbol that he kind of compromised with because his society and the culture around him kind of forced him to compromise on the kingdom of heaven. he would have preferred, he said, the people of another age will better understand the nature of the gospel when it's expressed in terms of living spiritual family relationships. And so this new fifth epical revelation is pointing us higher to the symbolism of the universal family of God. So now what we're going to do, now that we have a handle on these two terms, symbolism and culture, because they're used a great deal in these passages we're about to look at. And these passages, these paragraphs are in one of the most significant sections in the text, paper 87, section 7. And in this short but very powerful section, they're encouraging us to grow, our movement, our modern culture. They're encouraging us to grow a new and higher symbolism, a symbolic spiritual culture. And they describe this spiritual symbolism as, quote, the skeletal structure around which grows the living and dynamic body of personal spiritual experience, true religion. So this is important stuff. So now let's take a look at some of these seminal passages. And just to let you know, I have tweaked the language a little bit to help us assimilate them and assimilate them a little more easily. So here we have these passages. And the section on the nature of spiritual symbolic culture, the nature of cultism. Every inspiring ideal grasps for some perpetuating symbolism, seeks for some technique of cultural manifestation, or a culture, right? Which will do two things: ensure survival of the inspiring ideal and augment the realization, the manifesting of that ideal. So notice they're saying without exception, every ideal in the history of culture. And they reiterated from the dawn of civilization, every appealing movement in social culture or religious advancement has developed symbolic ceremonial. And then they make this pretty evocative statement. For me, it's an emotional statement. They say it is regrettable that so many modern believers in moral standards and spiritual ideals have no adequate symbolism, no culture of mutual support, nothing to belong to. So this is heartrending. They're describing the plight of literally millions of human beings who are floating out in the chaos of modern culture without any moorings, right? They don't belong anywhere culturally, and they're isolated and demoralized, sometimes desperately so. And so they say, then, in a sense, they begin to give us a sense of marching orders, right? And notice they use this word every and the word must many, many times in this section. It's a set of imperatives. They're saying, you have to do this if you're going to be effective. They say every new revelation of truth has given rise to a new spiritual culture. And even the restatement of the religion of Jesus, what we have to work with is in this latest revelation, must develop a new and appropriate symbolism. Modern men and women must find some adequate symbolism for their new and expanding ideas, ideals, and loyalties. And this higher symbolism of a higher civilization. So this is very future-oriented. You know, they're saying this remains out ahead for us to grow, to develop. This higher symbolism of a higher civilization must be predicated on the concept of the fatherhood of God, in my words, the spiritual parent-child relationship, and be pregnant with a mighty ideal of the brotherhood of man, the spiritual sister-brother relationship. I want to note something in passing. They could have said it much more directly. They could have said this higher symbolism must be the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. But they didn't say that. They mitigated the wording. They do this very intentionally. They said, must be predicated on the concept of, and be pregnant with the mighty ideal of. They're basically, I think, they're signaling, we want you to be creative with how you go about interpreting and speaking to your fellows so that you can touch their souls in language that works for you culturally, right? So this is important. And that's why we can get creative with phrases like the spiritual parent-child relationship, which is androgynous, right? It can be father, mother, and it has a lot of implications that the fatherhood of God doesn't have. So, this is a creative endeavor, this development of a new symbolic culture. And then this last paragraph, uh, part of it, but a spiritual culture, a symbolism of rituals, slogans, or goals. And if you look at that symbolism we've looked at before, it really begins to serve as a set of goals, and it's certainly a set of symbolic slogans or phrases. They say it will not function if it's too complex. Every effective religion unerringly develops a worthy symbolism. This symbolic culture is the skeletal structure around which grows the living and dynamic body of personal spiritual experience dash true religion. So I'm going to stop share. So what are they telling us here? My sense is that they're saying they want us, our growing Urantia movement over the next 100 years, to evolve this new and higher symbolic culture, which is grounded in these spiritual family relationships. I think what they're saying is that if we are going to be effective on all these three levels of culture, right, in our personal spiritual lives, in the spiritual enculturation of our groups and our evolving revelatory movement, and in our spiritual ministry to the surrounding culture, and over the next 1,000 years, desirably, in our efforts to actually uplift global culture. If we want to try and accomplish these things, we simply must begin to understand and work with these tools of symbolism and spiritual culture that they've tried to give us, sprinkled throughout the 2,000 plus pages of the Revelation. They're saying you have to take this seriously, this adventure of living our lives ideally in every moment in this remarkable set of spiritual family relationships that God is offering us. So what we've done today is look at this symbolism of the family way, a way of life in the family of God, and the spiritual culture that we can begin to grow around it. And in a sense, we've set the stage for our next few Sunday gatherings, where we'll continue to explore much more fully this way of life in spiritual family relationship. So that's probably enough from me. Elizabeth, I know you have spent many hours thinking and immersing yourself in these and related ideas, symbolism, culture, and a new evolving culture for our global civilization. Love to hear any of your thoughts in response.
Thank you so much for taking us very systematically, step by step, through an understanding of culture, what Jesus was really trying to teach us. He was a real culture changer, in a way, an iconoclast in his time. So I very much appreciate how the way that you have selected these core spiritual truths of the Urantia book and laid them out in a way that truly encompasses everything, I think, in the philosophy, the theology of the Urantia book. And I really have been now increasingly realizing the meaning of the spiritual family of God for many years, and particularly since you started to bring it to the forefront of our community. So a few things I want to say. One, everything we know starts in paradise. Our thinking should begin with the paradise model of the Trinity, which is the universal Father, the eternal Mother, Son, and the conjoined actor, the infinite Spirit, the offspring. They always were, are, and will be. That's the essential pattern for the entire universe to follow. And this is replicated, as we know, in their offspring, the creative sons and creative daughters of the universes of time and space. And they, in turn, or rather Michael specifically, the creator son, creates the material sons and daughters, the Adams and Eves of the system worlds. And they, in a sense, they're another downstepping very close to us, right? From the Creator, Son, and Daughter to mortal beings. They're the step in between. And they demonstrate this model of a beautiful, cooperative, complementary relationship between father, mother, and then a family, divine family system. And we know we'll hang out with them for a long time in our mortal ascension career and learn how to live divinely as they do in a family system. So then this model then is brought down to Earth, to evolutionary worlds with reproductive mortal beings like we have in our world. So we're the farthest removed really from this beautiful demonstration of spiritual family. But this is what we're asked now to live into the meaning and the values of the spiritual family of God, beginning with the Paradise Trinity and what we know of the Creator, Son, and Daughter, and what Adam and Eve were attempting to show us in their short mission here. So that's one. So that's very powerful to think of the origin of the model and how it's been downstepped to us. Second, meanings and values. I realize that as I change my language, I change my behavior. There's an adjustment in my thinking, in my worldview, and how I understand myself, my relationship to you and to all people, and my relationship to God. So as I change my language, I change myself. So I think for me, it was imperative to really practice this, actualize the meaning and value of what we're talking about. So when Jesus says we're a spiritual family, and you're my spiritual brother, and you're my spiritual sister, I'm going to call you that. I'm going to think of you as that. I'm changing the way that I regard you, how I understand you, and your function and your relationship to me. And then I find as I've been doing that and really deepening my understanding of these 7 spiritual truths, which really encompass everything. But in regard to relationship, love, to do my best to realize the meaning of divine parental love and to let that flow through me toward others. And honestly, when we really do this, it has an effect. We are transformed. The person we're relating to is transformed. We are elevated. We get a taste of what it is to be truly loving and respectful to each other, and it feels good. We know that it's good. We know, right?
We taste celestial reality in a sense.
Yes, we do. But by elevating our thinking in this way. So I think this is now an idea, an ideal, a meaning and a value of that whose time has come with the 5th epical revelation, really attempting to augment the meaning and value of Jesus' gospel. I think the men and women of our time are ready to receive this. I think it's already beginning, to ripple out into the world. And I'm just dedicated to this purpose. So I'm very happy to be here with you in Homecoming and with all of our community members, because I see that we are truly cultivating a loving spiritual community. And when I do that, I feel I am fulfilling God's purpose for my life, which is to live in the spiritual family of God, to make moral and spiritual choices that are based on realizing what it means to live in a spiritual family of God and what my obligations are to everyone else. And in that sense, we have a taste of what it's like to live in the Supreme and contribute to the growth of the Supreme Being. And it's through living these spiritual truths. So thank you very much.
Wonderful, wonderful. And it's just, it's always so enriching to hear these higher realities filtered through your marvelous mind and thinking and sentiment. Because I know you've steeped yourselves in these realities, and It shows, and that happens in each one of our lives as we immerse ourselves. And the reason I share that symbolism is, for me, I start my day and I end my day, and multiple times during the day before I worship, I will move through that symbolism and immerse myself in it. And that
Yes.
forms the context of how I live my life, moment to moment, and worship and pray. And so what I want to say is, as we go forward, our attempt during these first several weeks, first couple of months of homecoming, will be to delve deeply into this new and higher way of life and spiritual family relationships. And the attempt will be really to help all of us help each other uh, to discover how we can live in that manner, moment to moment, in unbroken communion with God and in spiritual family relationships with each other. It's a tall order, but Jesus did it, and he's saying by the time you hit paradise, you'll be doing it fully. Get a good start now. You might as well get a good start now, and let's see how much transformation we can accomplish in your lives, in your group function, and in the transformation of global culture, the uplifting of global culture, because goodness knows our world desperately needs it with what we're facing. So I want to say thank you, and thank you, Elizabeth. And as we said, we are re-recording this. So afterwards on Sunday, we broke into small groups, about 3, 4 people each, to discuss the impact and the implications of this and how these truths are reverberating in each other's lives and in our lives. So that happened for about 20 minutes, and then we regathered and we spent some time in worship, in quiet worship, to allow God to sort of filter these experiences and integrate them for us, work with them inwardly in our inner environments in worship. And we'll be doing that every Sunday going forward. The teaching segment, the breakout segment, for you to get to know each other and help each other sift through and incorporate these ideas, and then the worship component, and then gathering afterwards for a large group conversation on Zoom. Um, so please join us. And I want to share just a few sort of housekeeping details here for you to be aware of. And then we'll go ahead and end off and bid adieu until we gather together next time on a Sunday morning, which is February 4th for our week 2 of homecoming. So a couple of announcements. One is, as this recording will appear, we hope that we have every week's teaching segment and some of the sharing segment afterwards up available in a variety of media. We're going to put it on our website, the urantiuniversity.org website. Under events, you'll see homecoming and the Family Way Forum, and I'll say a little more about that in a moment. But if you click down to that page, you should see a list of links to the recordings of each of our weeks of homecoming, the teaching. And we're working as well to get it out on other media, so stay tuned. We'll fill you in on those developments as they unfold. The second thing I want to mention is every Tuesday and Thursday morning at the same time as homecoming, which is 10 a.m. Pacific, and using the same Zoom link, we have a smaller gathering that is a collaborative forum. It's entitled the Family Way Forum. And the idea here is to establish a mutual support seminar for anyone who wants to participate every Tuesday and Thursday morning. And the idea is to provide a supportive space for folks who feel a leading, a sense of calling to grow themselves as teachers and leaders and ministers and in evangelical outreach, sharing the message, in a sense, to help us all grow to become a more effective messenger people. And that will be both, a sense of calling, both with the symbolism around spiritual family, but also with any version you feel called to for the core spiritual teachings of the fifth epical revelation. And I'll be facilitating that conversation. It'll be largely interactive and spontaneous. So please join us in the Family Way Forum every Tuesday and Thursday, same Zoom link, 10 a.m. Both of those days, 10 a.m. Pacific time. So translate that into your time zone. Thirdly, I want to mention getting yourself signed up for day of reminders by email for both Homecoming and the Family Way Forum and any other of the venues that UUI, Urantia University, provides. So that way you can get a Zoom link in the morning of each event right at the top of your inbox in your email. Makes it very easy with a link and everything. So to do that, go to urantiauniversity.org, urantiauniversity.org. You'll land on the homepage. At the bottom of that homepage, you'll see a little button that says sign up for our mailing list here. Very easy. Just fill it out. It's a very simple form. Check what you want to receive, and you're good to go. The last thing I want to share before we end off here is we really want to grow this venue dramatically. The need, the hunger for spiritual nourishment is so broad spread and so intense out in our culture. If you know anyone, family, friends, any spiritual seeker, right? They don't have to be familiar with this 2,000-page text, the Urantia book. Anyone who's spiritually seeking will find a comfortable place here in Homecoming, because we're going to be speaking generically, but really with a great focus on the core spiritual experience of this new and higher way of life. So everyone is welcome, regardless of their familiarity with any or their background. So please invite your friends, invite your family. And as I said, we're going to try and get the links to these videos up on hopefully YouTube and other venues, so that you can point people to them. And if they like it, they can come every Sunday morning for the live experience, which includes the breakouts and the worship and the large group sharing. So that's about it. Thank you for joining us. It's been wonderful for Elizabeth and I to share with each other and to share with you. And we hope we see you soon and often, Sunday mornings, 10 a.m. Pacific time, for Homecoming, a spiritual family gathering. Lots of love to you all.
Love to all. Thank you.